You know how it goes. Long-time reader, first-time poster. This happened when I was young and irresponsible at 14 years old, back in 2011 or 2012, and was frequently in online chat sites for role-playing purposes. It was a bit of a bad habit, but as an introvert who didn't have many friends, it was how I did social interactions. I'll say for myself that even now I still have some of the friends I made back then, but let's not talk about them. Let's talk about my friend, Alex. Alex was a guy that I met in a Doctor Who chat room. He sent me a private message for something I said in the room that I don't remember, and we struck up a conversation. I remember he had really good grammar and typed paragraph-long messages. He told me that he was 2 years older than I was and lived on the West Coast, somewhere in California. At the time, I was living with my parents in North Carolina, so it was quite a considerable time difference, yet he always seemed to have the time to talk to me. As long-distance friendships often do, we sort of disintegrated. I could tell that he was making valid efforts to talk to me, but I just lost interest and found myself moving on after a few weeks of talking to him. One night he sent me what amounted to an essay worth of messages describing his love for me, how he just knew that we were meant for each other, yada yada yada. It was completely out of the blue, so I politely rejected him and ended our correspondence. He would continue to send me paragraphs of text every night, talking about our love and how perfect I was, blah blah blah. I eventually blocked him. Fast forward a couple of months to early 2013, I wasn't role-playing anymore, and it was the second month of my first serious relationship. One night my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. The owner of said number was apparently looking for a friend of his. I informed him that he had messaged the wrong number, laughed it off, and then we texted on and off for the rest of the evening. Dude seemed pretty nice, and he said he was pleased to have made friends with a supposed wrong number. I concurred. As we talked over the next few days, I found myself telling him about Alex, what had happened, how uncomfortable it made me, how relieved I was to have found someone else and be in a very happy relationship. My new friend was unresponsive for a couple of hours. I just figured I had annoyed him with my sob story and wrote it off. I was awoken from my sleep by my phone practically exploding with new notifications from my friend. It was Alex. He had changed his number just so he could text me and pretend to be a stranger who had the wrong number. He said that he still loved me, that I was a dumb slut for moving on from him, and that I had to break up with my boyfriend and rekindle our flame, or I would be sorry. Yikes, I blocked him and didn't tell my boyfriend anything. More months passed and I eventually forgot about Alex. I would still get occasional messages from unknown numbers saying innocent things like, "Hey, and what's up?" I blocked it every time. I wasn't taking any risk from someone I didn't know. It wasn't until I was 16 that shit finally hit the fan. At this point I had changed phones and numbers. I was FaceTiming my boyfriend when I got yet another text from an unknown number, but this one was different. It just said, "I'm here." I had no doubt that it was Alex. I said my goodnights to my boyfriend and ended the call before doing the stupidest thing I could have done. I answered the text. "Who is this?" I played dumb, and he saw right through it. He responded with, "It's me, baby. It's Alex. I always talked about the two of us being together, and now we can finally be. I love you so much." I wanted to throw up. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "I'm in Raleigh. I moved out and drove to find you. Tell me where you are and I could come pick you up. We can get a place and finally be together." Raleigh is the capital city of North Carolina. I live several hours away from it. Luckily enough, he didn't know this. I was 2 steps away from panicking. Looking back on it, he could have been lying, but at the time I was just so terrified that I couldn't think straight. I told him to fuck off and that he was crazy. He got pissed. "What are you talking about, honey? Why are you doing this? I came all this way just so I could be with you, and you're going to push me away? Don't be such a selfish bitch. Just tell me where you are." I didn't reply. Instead, I blocked the number, turned off my phone's location service, and didn't sleep. Unbelievably, I never heard from him again. I don't know what could have happened to him. And I have no idea how he got my number after I changed it. He came across my Facebook feed earlier this year, and his page said that he had moved to Atlanta and had a girlfriend now. I hope she's okay. This happened a few weeks ago when I was returning home from a bar. It was about 3 in the morning and I was a bit lightheaded from drinking too much. My friends and I had all gone home or went off with guys we met bar hopping, so I was all by myself with the expectation of other partygoers waiting to go home. It was the usual ensemble of crying girls, sleeping guys, and couples hooking up. I live in a very safe country and am accustomed to walking outdoors at night, so I wasn't worried about being alone. I never had any reason to be watchful until this night. The bus only runs every half hour or so at this time of night, so I was dozing off when an obviously drunken male sat down next to me. He was in his late 20s, doubled my size, and had vomit on his chest. Something about him immediately caught my attention. Despite the fact that he had every right to be there, I sensed that he had chosen to sit beside me deliberately, and not only because of the alluring bench. Neither of us said anything to the other, so I went back to being half asleep. The alcohol was affecting me more and more, and I had almost forgotten all about him by the time the bus came around. It was only after I had stepped on the bus that it dawned on me that he was going in the same direction as me. Not only that, he chose to sit in the seat facing mine and was quite obviously observing me. Something about the way he watched me made me feel unsettled. He did not look for encouraging signs from me, but looked at me like we had known each other for quite some time and were traveling not as strangers, but companions. It is difficult to explain, but I got the feeling that in his mind we were already in an unsaid agreement of some sort. I tried to avoid looking at him for most of the journey, but gave in to curiosity once and spared him a hasty glance. This only served to encourage him, and he attempted to speak to me, but I only answered in monosyllables and eventually stopped responding altogether. We were almost at the end of the route when he stopped to leave the bus. I sighed with relief, but my joy was short-lived. He stopped in the doorway and waited for a moment before he looked back at me. "Are you coming?" he asked in a tone you would use for people you know quite well, and not someone you have barely exchanged 2 words with. I ignored him, but he would not have it. "Hey you, are you coming?" he shouted. "This is the last stop." I did not answer, and he went back inside the bus to sit beside me. He put his feet on the seat facing him, imprisoning me between him and the wall. The alcohol had dulled my senses to such an extent that I barely even realized the danger of my situation. The bus reached the last stop shortly thereafter, and the driver announced that everyone had to get off. I looked behind me to check for other passengers, only to discover that there was no one left but me and my unwanted admirer. Everyone else had already gotten off, and I had not noticed because I was too drunk. I live outside the city, so this is not exactly unusual. But I was alarmed at the thought of being alone with this drunk stranger in a poorly lit residential area. I paused just outside the doors and considered my options. The man was waiting for me a couple of meters away, like he was waiting for the bus to leave. The bus driver caught my attention and asked if I knew the man, to which I shook my head. He hesitated for a moment, then told me to hurry onto the bus. I had barely gotten inside when he closed the doors behind me, and moments later the stranger began shaking and hitting the doors. He tried to pry the doors open, shouting to be let inside, and was obviously enraged. This really freaked me out, especially because I could have been stuck outside with his rage if it had not been for the bus driver. The bus driver asked me where I lived and drove me home with a really stern look on his face, and I ran all the way to my front door. I am a lot more careful now, and make sure I do not drink too much when I'm out partying. Who knows what might have happened if it had not been for the kind-hearted bus driver. If you were looking for something better than a "he looked at me and it was creepy" story, well, here you go. Throwaway account. This was an incredibly stressful time in my life, and I'd like to stay as anonymous as possible. I do admit, this story has a very fine line between bizarre and abusive, but overall, it's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to me. In all honesty, I've had a lot of creepy encounters, known a lot of normal people that ended up doing bad things. Sometimes I feel like I'm cursed to make friends with rough edges. This whole situation started when I was a sophomore in high school. I showed up to school one day and noticed a new boy in my class. I was your atypical goth girl, and this guy was a teenage bad boy dream. Piercings, leather jacket, reading some sort of obscure novel. I was hooked at first sight. I introduced myself, and soon enough we were dating. He will be referred to as X for the rest of the story. Now, a little background. I was brought up in an alcoholic parent's home. There were many times I was living by myself because my parent was in the hospital. Despite the chaos in my family life, I still managed to go to school every day and pull decent enough grades. After one too many, however, I was left for months living alone. Instead of coming home to an empty house, I asked X if I could live with him since he was closer to school. He and his parents happily welcomed me into their home. At this point in the relationship, we were phasing out of the puppy love stage, and I was starting to notice some serious red flags. X was very mental and started cutting regularly. His parents were very heavy drug users. There would be times I would try talking to X, and he would literally stare off into space and not notice my existence. He was never mean or abusive towards me, but I could definitely tell something was unhooking in him. When we started living together, it started to become very evident that something was very, very wrong. He started to tell me he thought he was possessed by a demon and he couldn't control himself. We both spiraled into a moderate drug use. I started skipping school. He started seeing more demons. In all truth, I hadn't realized what a hole I had dug myself into by living with him. One night, we ended up falling asleep after smoking a bowl and watching a movie. It was a big house, and we were living in the garden-level basement, 2 or so floors below his parents and siblings. Around midnight, I was awoken by the most frightening screech I've ever heard. X was right next to me in bed, contorting, convulsing, and screaming bloody murder. At first I thought it was a seizure and did not interfere, only looking for one of our cell phones to call 911. I got up out of the bed and he looked me dead in the eye. The blood drained from my veins. Never have I seen such hate. Everything seemed to happen in flashes from there. He never broke eye contact as he slowly rose from the bed. It almost looked as if he was in a marionette on a set of strings, pulled up with sunken shoulders. A half smile formed on his face as his body twitched. He started walking towards me. I cannot describe how terrified I was. Cornered in the room, opposite of the door, I felt my ears ring. He started screeching at me, coming within a centimeter of my face, never breaking his gaze. I started pushing him, yelling at him to cut it out, but it was like trying to push a stone statue. He would not move. He finally started talking, ranting about the demon and not making a single word of sense. As bizarre as it was, I knew he was having some sort of mental episode. I truly did fear for my life and needed to escape. Suddenly, I felt as if I was sucked back into the moment, and my senses were incredibly acute. I noticed the window we had cracked open earlier. I pushed the window back, punched through the screen, and climbed out as he stood silently staring at me. I'm pretty sure I stayed outside for an hour hyperventilating before I decided to ring the doorbell. One of his parents answered, very confused, and set me up with a blanket on the couch on the first floor, with no questions asked. In the morning, X came up and acted as if nothing had happened. No matter how much I pestered him about it, it was as if it had all been a bad dream. I made arrangements to stay with another friend that day and broke up with ex a week after. Sometimes I wonder if it had been some sort of sick joke to get me out of his house or out of the relationship, but I watched, unshocked in the years after he fell into severe drug abuse and mental illness. At one point I went to a school counselor and told them how worried I was for him, but it only made him hold a grudge against me. After everything that happened, I really started to feel sorry for him and sort of forgave him for what he did. He tried contacting me a few times after everything that happened, but as the years went by I heard less and less. Last I heard he was addicted to meth living on the streets. So, my high school sweetheart, let's not meet again. So this happened a while ago, but it still freaks me out. I was going to college at the time and had a day off. The previous night I'd stayed up pretty late, so the next morning I was definitely keen on sleeping in. At the time I was sharing a house with my sister, Liz. She has always been a morning person, and that particular morning I remember hearing her walking around the house, just getting ready for the day. Her boyfriend was staying over and I could hear them chatting away as I drifted in and out of sleep. I remember them leaving the house together, the door closing behind them and the car pulling out of the driveway. I knew they'd be going to get some breakfast, but I wasn't ready to get up, so I fell right back asleep. I was used to being alone in the house and it never bothered me. In fact, we often left the front door unlocked during the day when one of us was home. We were living in a city at the time, but had grown up in a really small country town where no one bothered to lock their doors, so I suppose we were just in the habit. I don't know how long I'd been asleep, but I was suddenly startled awake by the sound of the doorbell ringing. It didn't just ring once, someone was continuously pushing it, so it was like a constant loud ringing sound. I instantly thought it was my sister just being annoying trying to wake me up, so I didn't get up right away. The ringing stopped, but Liz and her boyfriend didn't come in. I knew the door would be unlocked, so I wasn't sure why she'd stay outside. I started to think that it was maybe a package guy or something, so I climbed out of bed and went to see. When I opened the door, no one was there. I assumed I had taken too long to get to the door, and whoever it was didn't leave a package or card or anything, so I figured it was no one important. I didn't think any more of it. Not until that afternoon, anyway. I was in the lounge just watching the TV when someone began knocking loudly on the front door. I went to the door, and when I opened it, I was surprised to see 2 police officers standing outside. I stood there just in shock for a second, wondering what they could possibly want. They explained that they were going door to door just asking some questions about a case they were working on. They asked me if I had answered the door to anyone else that day, and I instantly said no. Then I remembered the strange doorbell ringing, so I added, "Well, there was someone ringing the doorbell earlier today, but I was still in bed, so I didn't get to the door in time." They started asking me a lot of questions. Did I see who was at the door? Any cars out front? What time was this exactly? I answered the best I could. After that, they told me that a couple of guys were going around ringing the doorbells of houses in my area. They would basically wait until the person had opened the door and then burst in, overpowering the victim and then rob them at knife point. I later found out that they had chosen this area because a lot of elderly people lived here and they were easier to overpower and often kept large amounts of cash in their homes. It makes me sick to think that people like this exist. Luckily, the police soon caught these guys, and I got a call to let me know that one of the guys had confessed and confirmed that they had intended to rob my house, but were quoted on saying that they were distracted by something before anyone answered. I'm just so thankful that they didn't think to check to see if the main door was unlocked, because they could have literally walked right in on me. It goes without saying that I always make sure the doors are locked now, regardless of who is home. This happened a couple of years back when my friends and I were about 21 or 22. We had gone to Cape Town for our end-of-the-year holiday, which is what you do when you're young and from Joburg, with a group of girls who some of us were dating and some weren't. For context, Cape Town is often considered to be the best part of South Africa, and for good reason. At the end of the year, there are parties every night, and the city is really vibrant with locals and tourists doing their thing. It's also pretty safe, relative to normal crime rates in the country, but there is still a bad homeless problem here, and anyone who knows the country knows how poverty causes people to do just about anything. Things can get unsafe and dangerous in a matter of seconds. We were out for dinner and drinks on this main road where the bars and clubs are open all night, people everywhere having fun, dashed with a few unsavory people who were there for nefarious reasons, stealing phones and whatnot. Well, we'd all had a few drinks and all wanted to go back to the apartment, so we all left and a few of my friends got takeaway pizza. Out of nowhere, this sort of well-dressed guy approaches us and takes one of the pizzas out of one of the girls' hands and says that he'll carry it for us to the taxi. These guys normally try to prey on innocent people who don't know what to do in this situation, but my friends and I went to government school in Joburg and immediately knew this is a scam and that something's going to happen. So we tell him no and get the pizza back from him, walking towards a taxi to get our ride back. All the while he's pestering us with the usual you get here, asking for change, asking for food, telling us we didn't appreciate his service, telling us sob stories. We were all a bit desensitized to that stuff, to be honest, so we tell him in a not so nice way to leave us alone. He obviously doesn't let up. In South Africa, these guys will pester you, but normally just to break you down until you give them something. But we make it to the taxi and get in and tell the driver to go. This guy comes to the passenger window and starts mouthing off about us owing him $5 and going off about this service of basically taking a pizza that wasn't his. There was no way we were going to pay him and tell the driver we don't know this guy and to go. The taxi driver has this confused expression on his face and either thinks that we don't know him or that we owe him something and are trying to make a Duncan escape, so he doesn't listen and lets the guy in. This guy immediately jumps in and tries to launch over the front passenger seat, screaming and swearing at us about this whole altercation. We're all in a bit of a panic, yelling at the taxi driver to get him out. I'm leaning back, kicking up at this guy so he can't get in the back seat, and eventually the taxi driver gets the door open and pushes him out onto the street and finally goes. The guy starts hitting the window, the girls are all terrified and crying, and the guy is chasing after the taxi until he finally gives up. Other than that, I would rate the holiday a 10 out of 10, and it didn't stop us from walking around in a less populated place at night and enjoying the sea breeze. But let's not meet again, fake, creepy pizza escort guy. I remember I was living in a multi-family house with 7 other families. This was a tough city, but the street itself was pretty quiet as it was mostly families with kids. When I moved in, the 2 floors above mine were vacant, and a couple with small children lived below me. A single guy moved into the unit above mine, and he seemed like a pretty cool guy. He was quiet as a neighbor, and we'd say hi to each other in passing. He would leave early in the morning and come back at night. I worked 9 to 5, so I was gone a good chunk of the day as well. However, after 5 months in the house, a young couple moved into the 3rd floor unit. Things started to change immediately. Trash started getting left in the entryway and porch. Strange people started coming and going into the house at all hours of the day and night, always going up to and coming back down from the 3rd floor. I never saw the guy much, but I would see or hear the woman often. The manner with she spoke led me to believe she was either a heavy drug user or just overall very hyperactive. One night, a woman was screaming bloody murder upstairs. I'd hear a loud thump and she'd scream again. I've never once called the police in my life, but I dialed 911 as I seriously believed that this woman was being harmed. To those wondering why I didn't go up there, don't be foolish. If someone has no regard for their partner, they sure as shit don't have any regard for you, and being a hero can get you killed. 3 police officers showed up a few minutes later, and I let them take care of it. I didn't pay much further attention except noticing that the police left without arresting anyone. At a later date, I heard the guy from the 3rd floor, right outside my door, having a conversation about selling cocaine, which explains the guest at odd hours. Fast forward some weeks and I hear a knock at the front door of the house, around 5 a.m. I look through the blinds and see 2 men and women with vests that just say police. This and their plain clothes led me to believe that they were federal agents. I open my door and the front door of the house. I say, "Is there a problem, officers?" And one of the officers or agents notices my front door open and says, "What's the family name on this apartment?" I replied and he says, "Do you know the people upstairs?" And I said, "No, they moved in a few months ago." He says, "Okay," and proceeds to go upstairs with the other officers. I go back into my apartment and lie back down in bed. After a few minutes I hear footsteps coming back down the stairs, and the officers say, "Let's check the basement." Nothing came of this either. In the following weeks I noticed that the man from the 3rd floor hasn't shown up in a while. I never really saw him coming or going and generally saw the woman coming home, but he completely disappeared. I might also add that these people did not work, as my girlfriend lived with me and heard them during the day bringing more strange people over. One night, around 11:30 p.m., the woman comes home and does not have a key. She proceeds to stand outside shrieking up at the 3rd floor window until someone comes down to let her in. 2 or 3 nights later she repeats this, only she shrieks so long that someone else in the neighborhood called the police. So this is 3 or 4 months of her living there and the 3rd time the police have shown up to a previously quiet address. Why didn't I let her in? Well, because 1, it's a rough neighborhood and I don't open the door for people I don't know, and 2, I'm not her fucking babysitter. She should remember her key. Maybe I'd let her in if she wasn't an asshole, but I felt in no way obligated to help her because she's a terrible neighbor. One day I arrived home from work and noticed dents in the doorknob and one of the windows broken on the front door. This idiot obviously forgot her key and took more drastic measures to get in. I called maintenance and they fixed it up. One Saturday I was getting ready to take a shower and heard the window on the front door breaking. I normally minded my own business, but I had been listening to this woman's bullshit for 5 months. At this point, I was fed up. Not to mention, I'm not going to sit by while she damages property. I opened my front door and asked her through the window she broke, "What the fuck are you doing?" "I don't have a key. Chris changed the locks," she replied. Gee, I wonder why. So I let her in to stop the noise and to further confront her. However, she was very apologetic and non-confrontational, which somewhat disarmed me, not to mention she was very petite at 5'2". I asked her, "Your boyfriend doesn't have a key?" "I don't have a boyfriend," she replies. Bullshit. "Other people have to live here, you know. Don't do that shit again," I said to her and went back inside. Fast forward to the summer, this woman has been in the house for 6 months. Her shrieking, sketchy companions, and overall tomfoolery has driven us insane. My girlfriend, home alone at this point because she was very pregnant, was afraid of this woman. I wasn't as worried because I had a licensed .45 caliber handgun in the house, but I still worried if my girlfriend would have it in her to use it if I wasn't there. She calls me while I'm at work and says there's 3 people, a baby and a dog on the stairs outside of our door just hanging out and being loud. I told her not to worry and I'd be home at the usual time. When I arrived, there was no 3rd person or dog. It was a woman with a baby and a skinny, shady-looking guy with braids. However, they weren't making any noise, so I didn't say anything to them. I reassured my girlfriend if they made any noise, I'd go out and tell them to shut the fuck up. About 45 minutes to an hour passes and I hear a police radio in the side yard. I look out and sure as shit, there's a cop looking around in the side yard. I look out my front window and see 4 or 5 cruisers and about 8 officers standing outside. What the fuck is going on? I walk out and on my way out I notice that the people who were on the stairs are gone and go up to one of the officers and ask what's going on. An officer says to me, "What floor do you live on?" I tell him the 1st. He responds, "We're interested in the people on the 3rd floor." I go back inside and I hear the cops going upstairs and questioning the crazy bitch on the 3rd floor, to which she responds by denying any knowledge of what's happening. The officers look around the house more, and while this is happening, I bring my girlfriend out on the street where a news crew and a crowd of neighbors had begun to gather. I wanted us to be out of the house in case bullets started flying. While unlikely, the erratic behavior that this woman has constantly exhibited shows that she's not all there and we don't really know what she's capable of. After the cops come back out and look defeated, I noticed the woman who was on the stairs was standing outside of the house like a spectator. I go back in the house and notice that the laundry room door is shut. I went and tugged on the handle, and it was like someone was holding it from the other side. I went back out and told the cops, "I think the guy is in the laundry room." Minutes later, the cops knock the door handle off and pull him out at gunpoint. Fuck him. The chick upstairs has terrorized the neighborhood for months, and I'm not about to cover for her or any of her friends. The cops tore up the laundry room in the process and left a huge mess. As I was talking to one of the arresting officers, the cool guy from the 2nd floor comes home with a "what the fuck" look on his face. I said, "Man, you just missed a whole bunch of crazy shit." The chick upstairs got off free. The chick who was on the stairs did as well, and I don't know what the guy was wanted for or charged with, but I know he had a knife in his possession and was charged with that. My lease ended a week later and my girlfriend and I moved out. Neighbor from hell, let's not meet again. Ever. Hey guys, thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the Nightmare Army. I'm always looking for new soldiers in my Nightmare Nation. So guys, I hope everybody has a great Friday, and I hope everybody's having as much fun as playing the Elder Scrolls Skyrim Remastered and Batman Return to Arkham, remastered. Because guys, I swear to God, this past week and this past weekend, I have been playing those two games like non-stop. After I beat Batman Arkham Asylum, I jumped into Arkham City, beat that on normal, and then played it again on New Game Plus. Awesome game. There's just something about in those Batman games where you could just, like, I don't know, punch somebody, build up your combo, and then frickin' break their arm. It's so badass. I love it. I've loved those games, and it's just awesome that I get to play them on the PS4. Same thing with Skyrim, too, with the mods. Now, I'm not necessarily a big PC person, so I've never played Skyrim on PC, which everybody keeps telling me to do, and I will get a gaming PC sometime in the future, but my god, though, man, the mods in that game, oh god, so much fun. I understand on the PS4 or whatever, there's not that many mods, but it's still fun for me. Just the fact that I could level up fast and get every item in the game is just good enough for me. But anyways, guys, thank you all for watching. And I'm sorry if I go off topic a little bit sometimes. But anyways, like I said, thank you all for watching. And just remember, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.